Sorry, sometimes there's a little glitchy moment when I reset the settings. There we go. Perfect. How are you today?
Good. Just got off work. It's a little cold, but
Oh, yeah. Did you have snow this weekend?
yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I had a couple students that told me that they had snow as well in other places. So must have just been a cold front coming through. So it's great to meet you and,
You
put a
too?
face to you. So tell me a little bit about, I know a little bit already about your goals, but I'd love to hear a little bit about where you're at today, how your voice is feeling today. What would make you feel like this is a productive session? When you leave here today, what would you like to have gotten out of this time together?
I'm kind of trying to figure out exactly what my range is, where
Yeah,
my
okay,
tone
great.
sounds the best.
Yeah.
Um, and like maybe just a few basic warm-up exercises at least to
Hmm.
nurture that and make it improve it a little bit, make the best of it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great. Sounds good. So, I also had a few notes from what we had talked about previously with your notes when you first submitted to sign up and everything, too. But that just kind of helps me know what your mindset is for today, if your voice isn't feeling top notch today, all those good things. So, just kind of helps us be on the same page diving in. So, usually for the first session, I like to use this time to get to know you a little bit better, to let you get to know me and my teaching style, how I communicate. I might use words that you go, what does that mean? And so it's a way for us to kind of get on the same page, get to know each other better. I like that you said that you want to explore your voice more, the range, the tone. I do that with every student in the first session anyway, because I want to know where your voice is at. So we're going to explore some basic building blocks of the voice, things like how our breath works and how we produce sound and the different muscles that control the voice and what it feels like to sing in different parts of your range so that we can kind of get you on the right track. Even if I have a student who's really advanced and they're starting out with me for the first time, I just like to use this time for me to see where you're at, for us to get on the same page with everything. And then at the end of the lesson, I like to give you a little bit of homework as well as talk a little bit about what I've observed and where I think we might go from here so I can put together a lesson plan going forward and make sure that we stay on the right track with you. So, as we're starting out today, just out of curiosity, do you have any artists that you really like to sing along with, or certain range in choir that you typically feel like you fit the best, or that you're the most comfortable in, or maybe a particular song that feels really comfortable to sing?
I have to think about that for a second.
Sure.
I've always so I was in choir in middle school for
Mm-hmm.
1 year. Um, right around, yeah, I was age 12 going on 13. We were, and our teacher already had like there was half a dozen of us that were already in the baritone class.
Okay.
Um, so we were a little bit lower than most of the rest of there were like two other boys that still sang alto. Um,
Yeah.
but that so I always had this idea in my head that I'm a baritone.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm at the point now I'm trying to figure it out. And so the choir parts that I sing most comfortably, I'm more comfortable with the bass right now, which is
Sure.
really just kind of what I would think of as a baritone range.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe I resonate like a tenor, and maybe I should be singing a little bit higher.
Sure. We can
That's what I'm
definitely
trying to
explore
figure
that.
out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and it's hard when you were, 12, 13 at that time and you're a lot older now, the body changes, the voice changes over
yeah,
time. And so where I was when I was in middle school, high school, undergrad, grad school now, my voice has changed throughout that time multiple times, and I had to kind of figure out my voice and where it was depending on where I am in my vocal journey. So that I think is a great thing to revisit and go, am I still in that baritone range? Has my voice changed very much? And what's great is Usually, even if you are a bass or a baritone, you can actually learn to open up the higher part of your voice and
Hmm.
sing in that tenor range. Baritones and basses will often learn to sing in an extended upper range, and so we can figure out, that falsetto land and see if you feel comfortable in that range as well. And even if right now you don't feel super comfortable in that range, if you're like, "Oh, but I'd love to be able to sing these songs," then we can work on sharpening up those skills, building up those muscles and the coordination and the strength and, the agility up there. And then we can get you in a higher range. So, and sometimes it's just a matter of changing the key so you can sing whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I love it. Great. So that just kind of gives me a little bit of insight of where you feel like you're at right now as well as we're getting started. So let's talk a little bit about our posture and alignment. Now, the reason we do this is because we want the air to be able to get through unhindered. We want a nice open pathway for that air because the air for the voice is kind of like gas in the car. Without it, you're not going to go anywhere. There's not going to be any
Hmm.
sound without that air. So I want you to think from your hips. You're going to think of that spine lifting and lengthening. I like to imagine there's like a little air pocket between every chunk of the spine as I lift up. We're going to think tall and broad. So we're very expansive as well. So nice and tall, nice and broad, lifting, expanding. Those shoulders are back. That sternum and clavicle are nice and lifted and open. Ears over shoulders, over hips. And we're going to do a nice big breath in and just let me see what it's like when you take a big breath. So, big old breath in. All right, good. That was pretty good. So, here's the thing. We often will see people take a breath and go, and they'll lift their shoulders like that. But we don't necessarily want that in singing because we want to be able to control the exhalation. You actually, yeah.
I, I left my piano on and the cats are playing some jazz right now. I'm gonna go shut it off.
Oh, okay. They're like the Aristocats, practicing their scales and arpeggios.
Yeah, it's a little free form and um,
They're just like,
yeah, yeah.
that's fun. Have you seen that movie, the cartoon, The Aristocats?
Yeah, I saw that when I was a kid.
Right, yeah, with like the mom and the little kittens, and they're like practicing their piano. So that's what it made me think
Yeah.
of. Nice. Alrighty. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we're thinking about that breath, and we want to keep usually the shoulders a little more stationary. That shallow breathing is great for things like sprinting or maybe ballet, things where you need oxygen really fast in and out of your body, but we can't really control the exhalation, and that's really important for singing. So we're going to think expanding lower in the body. We're going to think of this lower part of your torso. So the rib cage, I want you to think about the intercostal muscles, those little muscles in between the ribs, and you're going to lift and expand as you breathe in. So actively opening and expanding as you breathe in. Let's try that. Breathe in. And then focused energy up and out. Try that again. Breathe in. Focused energy up and out. One more time, feeling that lift. Nice. We're going to focus a little lower in the body now. So at rest, the diaphragm is like an upside down bowl. As we breathe in, it's going to flatten and then it's going to press down. And it has kind of this elevator action. As we're breathing in, it presses down. It pushes all the other organs and things out of the way so the lungs can expand more. So as we're inhaling and the lungs are expanding and expanding, those other organs need somewhere to go. So the belly space is going to open up a little bit lower in that torso. And then as we exhale, we're going to engage with those abs. It's going to be kind of like crunches or sit up. You're going to feel that engagement. And then you'll have the diaphragm flow back up to its resting place like that upside down bowl. So it's like this elevator action, and we get consistency with that airflow by using that diaphragm. So we're going to focus a little lower now. Go ahead and put your hands on your low belly space, and we're going to breathe in, feel that expansion. And then you're going to exhale a focused energy up and out, really steady. Try breathing in low again. And then focused energy from that low core. One more of those. Breathe in. And focused energy up and out. Great. All right. So people usually don't think about this. I know I didn't before lessons. We have a lot of room to expand in the back as well. I can actually feel where my rib cage goes to in the front and where it goes to in the back. It's a lot longer in the back, and all of that is protecting my lungs. So I have a lot more space to expand into that back. So let's try expanding more in that back space. If you have trouble accessing that space, try hunching forward a little bit because it'll close off the front a bit more and sort of force the air back. So try to find that expansion in the back space. Focusing on the sides and then around to the back can sometimes be helpful as well. So just a few cycles in and out at your own pace, trying to feel that back space engaging. Awesome. Now we're going to think of that entire trunk of your body, the whole torso. We're going to think about breathing and expanding open as you inhale, and then focused energy up and out. So that entire torso opening and expanding as you breathe in, and then focused energy up and out. Try that. Breathing in. All right, very nice. Okay. Now, how do we then turn that airflow into sound? How do we make it become singing sound? So in your throat, you have one tube that's going to split like a fork in a road. So the one tube is going to go down the esophagus to your stomach, and the other is your trachea branching off, and that's going to go to your lungs. Right at the top, where the trachea and the esophagus split from one tube into two, right at the top of the throat there where that fork happens, you've got the gatekeepers on the trachea. So those are your vocal folds. So they are kind of like stretchy rubber bands, but made out of a fleshy material. They're like a very pale pink color, kind of like pearly looking, and they're very small. So if you look at your fingernail across, that's about how long they are. So then when I want to sing, I just think, okay, I'm going to make noise. And we just sort of subconsciously have evolved to know how to do it. Babies who grow up with parents who can't speak, they actually don't learn to speak or sing because they're not used to hearing it. But if we do hear it and we grow up hearing it, we just sort of learn how to do that subconsciously. We figure it out. So the main job is keeping you alive. They're obviously doing their job, keeping food and water and coffee and everything out of the lungs and protecting that airflow. So when we want to make sound, we pull those together, the gatekeepers, they pull together, we send air through, and they vibrate. Those vibrations, faster, slower, that's going to tell us what pitch it is. For slower vibrations, that's going to translate to lower pitches. For faster vibrations, it's translating to higher pitches. So when I want to sing a low note, I'm going to vibrate slower. When I want to sing high, I'm going to vibrate faster. So I'm going to need faster airflow moving more quickly through the vocal folds. So we're going to try just creating some sound here and just kind of seeing what comes out. Right now, don't worry about what you sound like. Focus more on just letting the air flow and then that vibration that just kind of flows out of that and the sound that just sort of floats along on top of the breath. So, just kind of an airy sound, just allowing a vibration. Exactly, yes. Try that a few times, just kind of getting a sigh feeling. Just moving the air through. Very good. Yes. So now we have two muscles that control those vocal folds. One pulls front to back. So like looking ahead and right behind you, front to back. That's going to make them longer and more narrow. So it's like a rubber band stretching. It's going to get thinner and longer. When I go side to side, it's going to make them shorter and thicker. And when I go front to back, there's a lighter pressure on the closure. So then the air can get through faster, and then we get those faster vibrations for the higher notes. There's less pressurized airflow. Then when I engage that side to side muscle and they get thicker and wider, there's a firmer pressure, so the air is to flow through more slowly, and that's how we get those lower pitches. So you'll feel there's more pressurized airflow when you're lower, and it's a lighter pressure and a more airy feeling when you go higher because of those two different muscles. So that front to back muscle is called your cricothyroid muscle. I'm going to call it your head voice muscle. That's more the like Northeast style of teaching. And that's because most people, not all, but most are going to feel the vibrations more in their head. Now that side to side muscle is called your thyroarytenoid. I'm going to call that your chest voice muscle. Now the reason for that is that most people, again, not all, but most will feel vibrations more in their chest area when they're engaging that particular muscle. So if you feel it a little bit differently, it's totally okay. We'll figure out the verbiage and, if you're more visual, more auditory, if, different exercises help you more, we'll figure those things out. And it's all about figuring out how this particular singer translates everything. So I could tell you anatomy all day, but it doesn't always translate. So I'll say head voice muscle when it's more of those higher pitches or that front to back muscle engaging, and chest voice muscle when we're talking about that side to side muscle. So let's try finding those different spaces. First off, let's try like a sad little puppy dog, and he's whining. Maybe he has to go potty, or he's really thirsty, or he wants snuggles, and he does a... Now keep in mind, your voice and mine are different, so go where it's comfortable for you, but more of that like whiny puppy sound. Exactly. Yes. So that is your head voice muscle at work. All right. Now try like a little baby owl, or maybe like, a turtle dove, or maybe like Mickey Mouse, the Pillsbury Doughboy, more that whoo, whoo. Exactly. That's your head voice muscle working. Now let's try like you are Santa Claus and you're giving me a big old ho, ho, ho. Give me a ho, ho, ho.
I gotta stop laughing first. Ho, ho, ho.
Exactly. Yes. So that's more of your chest voice muscle. It's got more of like a warm, fuzzy feeling, like you just, drank some hot cocoa, or you've got a kitty cat curled up on your chest, warm and fuzzy feelings. And you can feel those vibrations here and here, usually, not always, but most of the time you can. So if you can't, no problem at all. My student, Derek, is very analytical, and he is like, I don't feel anything you just said. And I'm like, that's okay. And we find what works for him. Visuals usually work better. So if you feel it, if you don't, that's all right. We'll figure out, again, your verbiage. So you found those spaces and you're able to identify, okay, that feels a little bit different. You can tell it's a little bit higher, a little bit lower, and we're engaging those two different muscles. Excellent. Very good. So we also are going to have a space that I'll call your mixed voice. That's going to be where both muscles are actually working together. Women have a much larger mixed voice. We have about an octave to an octave and a half. And men usually have a much smaller range of mixing, maybe like half an octave at most. And so sometimes men will be tempted. Women kind of have to conquer it. Sometimes men will be tempted to be like, oh, I'm just going to use like one or the other. And they don't bridge that gap and get the muscles to work together. But in order for you to have like the full scope of your range and choices about how you want to use your voice, mastering that mix range is, I think, really important. So I like to get both muscles strong and then get them working together so you have choices and options. So we're going to work on bridging that gap so that you can have that complete mastery of your voice. Because sometimes you'll hear in songs, like certain bands and things, they'll be like low and they'll just like jump up an octave, and they never really like challenge themselves to sing through the break. But we're going to conquer it so that you have options. Alrighty, so we're going to start a little bit lower. I feel like your So usually when people come in, one muscle is stronger than the other. You're probably a little more like comfortable and strong in that chest voice muscle area, which is totally fine. And that's just like a more satisfying feeling probably at this point. But we're going to work on strengthening the other as well. So you have, again, those options. You can sing like Creep or some song that goes really high, right? Like Hallelujah in a high floaty key that feels very reverent or something, You have choices then. So let's go ahead and we're going to start a little bit lower and just kind of lean into that sound of this lower resonant space first. Keep in mind, my voice instrument is different than yours. Mm-hmm. So if I get where I can't really sing in that range anymore, I'll let you keep going and you just enjoy it, sing out. All right, we're going to try on just an open ah. We're going to go on ah. So this is going to be just that sigh feeling, embracing that low range. Breathing in. Ah. Nice. And we're kind of at the bottom. Do you feel how it's starting to get kind of like crackly and gravelly feeling? Mm-hmm. So that's what we call the vocal fry. That's going to be at the very bottom of your range. And it actually isn't a bad thing to sing in that. They actually use it for voice therapy quite a lot. It's like a voice massage to your vocal folds, and the body actually releases hydration both internally and externally to them. So it's a great thing to use when you're first warming up, or when you're cooling down at the end of a singing session, just to kind of like nourish and nurture those, a little TLC. And also it can give us kind of a cool quality sometimes. If you think of singers who had like that kind of a sound, like Britney Spears does it all the time. Oh, baby, baby. How was I supposed to know? Right? She uses it all the time. And different artists you'll hear use quite a bit of it. Like Darius Rucker does quite a bit. You'll notice it, those little like kind of sounds that they add, these fun effects. And so it can be something you really enjoy and utilize. Let's go a little bit higher now. Still feeling that kind of sigh feeling. We're going to find where your bridge moment happens, where that sort of like transition happens, the passaggio change. So let's try going up. We're going to start on middle C. We're going to try on ma, and we'll hold it for a few seconds, and then we'll go up a half step, and we're just going to kind of work through the range. Breathing in. Ma. feeling at that point?
Not bad.
Do you feel any like painful things happening in here? Like, nope.
No.
I didn't think so.
I've
I didn't hear anything really concerning there. But
I've
you can
sang
feel
up
it's
there
more
plenty.
effortful, right?
Yeah, I've sang up there plenty. It's just yeah, it always that kind of weak falsetto.
Hmm.
I don't spend a whole lot of time up there lately, but yeah, I've
Yeah.
been up there before.
Well, and here's the thing. We will inside of ourselves feel like it's, like you said, like weaker, softer, like smaller when we get to a certain height, when we're in that like pure head voice or falsetto or whistle tone register. It's going to feel a lot of the time like it is smaller because of that pressure in the throat. When you're lower, it'll feel like that's meatier and bigger. And then when it's more stretched like that, we're relying more on resonant spaces to project, that kind of thing. And so a lot of the time we'll perceive it as smaller. And so we'll actually be tempted to kind of like hold the sound inside and like cover it. And then it'll sound a little bit better in our head. But if you're doing it right and you're sending it up and out to your audience,
Hmm.
it is going to feel a little bit softer and smaller in that space. But your audience is still going to hear it. That's why singers can sing over an entire orchestra and be heard way in the back of the hall.
Hmm.
They're utilizing those resonant spaces, and also the human ear picks up on higher pitches better. We just kind of have evolved to hear that. That's why with a scream or a baby crying, you're going to notice that. You're going to go, what? I hear that, right? And it's going to catch you.
Hmm.
So we know that those higher pitches are things we usually want to listen for. So the ear will really pick that up. I had a gig where the power went out, and they ended up we for a while just sang without any power, and so we didn't have any mics or anything. So I said, okay band, we're gonna just raise the key on everything. And then I just sang it in a higher key, and I asked people, I was like, can you hear in the back? And they were like, oh yeah, we hear you great. And so it actually worked out because I raised the key. They could hear me all the way in the back better, which for the style of music was a little bit different, but they were like, well, it's beautiful. They still enjoyed it. So, they were like, okay, cool. So it all worked out. So you never know what's going to happen. So you can actually use that to your advantage. And like I was saying before, I feel like you are probably just a little bit stronger and more like secure feeling in that lower. But honestly, I think you can definitely sing songs up in the higher range too. Let's see about how far you're comfortable going to in the higher. We're going to do a vocal stretch. So I want to try low to high on whoop. So you're going to do just sliding. So more that side to side to zoop, lengthening front to back. So a whoop.
Mm. Ooh.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, good. Let's try that one more time. Whoop.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yes, and remember too, your range and mine might be different because our
Yeah.
instruments are different, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm actually somewhere in my head. I'm actually trying to follow and repeat you, but yeah,
Yes, right.
it's
So
not
just
gonna
challenging
happen.
yourself to like, okay, where's my range? So we're gonna try on Wahoo, high to low, and you're just gonna go where it's your comfortable range. On Wah, starting high, nice and stretched front to back, and then Hoo, sliding down to where it's comfy and it's more of that thick, wide positioning. All right, so try that on Wahoo, high to low, and your comfortable range.
Hmm. Wow!
Yeah, exactly. Good. One more of those.
Wahoo!
Nice. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it was about the range that I was like, we should probably stick with that range. So it was right around actually where I was kind of feeling like we should probably not go beyond that for today. But sometimes as we're working those muscles and we're warming up more and we're, stretching them more and more, you'll be able to expand that range even more. So you've got, as far as the different parts of your voice, we've got vocal fry at the very bottom, your chest voice range, which is going to be more of that side to side muscle. We've got mixie range where you're using both together, which we did go through, and you probably felt transitioning there. We're going to work to make that really smooth, ascending and descending. We've got that head voice range, and the reason I usually don't say falsetto is because there's discrepancy amongst different pedagogues on what they mean. They can mean head voice and they can mean whistle register. So I usually don't say falsetto because there's confusion as to what I'm talking about. I'll usually say your head voice range, which is that front to back muscle. And then I'll say whistle register, which is like vocal fry, but at the very top. So it's the extreme stretching, and the prevailing theory, we don't know for sure because the camera cannot see because the epiglottis folds over and it blocks it. And it's like, you can't see. So the glottis is in the way. So it's like it folds over and we can't see what's actually happening. But my theory, I subscribe to the prevailing theory, which is you're stretched so far that only the little end of the vocal folds are vibrating against each other. So just like a little point. And then you get like this lighter kind of like bell tone kind of sound that's a lot harder to control. It doesn't even like feel like you're full voicing anymore at that point. And usually if I say falsetto, I'm referring to more of that whistle range. So Mariah Carey uses hers a lot. Christine Daae in Phantom of the Opera, the Queen of the Night, and the Magic Flute, the da 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 da. That's in that range. A lot of men don't learn to use it, but they can. All voices can learn to use their whistle register range, and I think it can be really rewarding and fun to do so. So if you're wanting to sing stuff that's a lot higher, we can definitely work on that. So I've heard a little bit of the full range. So at this point, I know that you were wanting just like some exercises to be using during the week. So I'm going to give you some exercises you can utilize this week. So we want to incorporate things like slides, scales, arpeggios, which are just like little skips up and down, maybe some leaps, some interval work. We want to challenge you to go through the gamut of your range and be exercising your full range. So we're going to go through some different exercises you can try. Usually I recommend starting with more of the SOVT exercises, which are going to be they're the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises is the fancy word for them. But all it means is that you're being a little more gentle on the vocal folds. There's a little less pressure on them. They're a great way to get warmed up and cooled down. So starting with something like a hum, or singing on an open mouthed hum with your tongue attached to the roof of your mouth, is really gentle. You can do things like lip trills or tongue trills, and those are really, really gentle on the vocal folds. You can also sing through a straw, or you can do a V consonant and sing through that. That's a really good one to get your breath moving. So starting with something really gentle, just to kind of wake up your voice, get it working. And the reason we warm up is because when our vocal folds are at rest and they're not warmed up, they're thinner, they're not as flexible. As we warm them up, the body's going to release hyaluronic acid internally. They're going to swell, and then they'll line up more evenly. And when they vibrate, you're going to get a cleaner, clearer sound. Also, when they're warmed up, they're going to be more flexible and pliable. The body also releases more. It's kind of like a squeaky door and you oil it up with WD-40. And the body does kind of the same thing, releasing kind of like lubrication as well. So they vibrate more evenly and smoothly against each other. So that's why warming up is going to be really helpful. So starting with a hum to begin. And like I said before, you're going to want to incorporate slides, scales, stepwise motion, and also like some skips and jumps into your practice. So why don't we start with a hum on a slide first? And we're going to do a sliding, but we're going to slide a third first, and then we'll slide the full fifth second. All right, so a little bit of interval work at the same time. Breathing in. All right, that was great. That was the E. So there's middle C, which is C4. Then we have C3, and then you have the C below that, which would be C2. So that's actually E2. So it was, here's middle C, and that's where we got to. So that's a nice big honking range you got there. That's awesome. That's a lot of fun. Exactly, that's the one. Yes. You're like, I got it.
I do sing a lot with my guitar. Mm-hmm. I'll do a lot of scales and testing my range, and that's so
yeah. Guitarists actually statistically have the best musical ears. So your ear is probably pretty strong then. Statistically, guitarists have the strongest musical ear.
Maybe.
So I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. Alrighty, so we're going to try now we just tried the hum going a little lower. Let's switch to focusing more on the breath. Now, before we do this exercise, I want you to try feeling the difference in our breath flow, if it's more like a long, steady flow or if it's more like short puffs of air. So let's try on a shh. We're going to go shh. Feel that. Yeah, so we have a little resistance. You can feel that. Now try shh, 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 shh. Yep, with the little puffs. Now let's try like a cymbal on a drum set. Good. Now like maracas. Nice. Now like a hissing snake. He's laughing with his buddies. Good. Now a hissing snake who's aggravated and he's like threatening someone, like being like, get away. Yep, so we've got those long flowing breaths that stay continuous and draw out, kind of like, bowing on a stringed instrument like a violin or a cello, right? More of that legato, long lines. And then we have more percussive sounds like a piano with the striking of the key, right? So the hammer strikes the string, or a xylophone, ding, 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 right? So we're thinking of creating those different sounds with our voice. So I want you to try now on the V, like a race car revving or like a motorcycle revving. Exactly, yes. So we're going to focus on the feeling of it having a nice slide through like a sliding trombone, and then on a descending scale, note, 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 which is individual notes. All right, so we're going to try on that V. So first that slide and then individual notes. Here we go. Sorry, I played that one wrong. Let's do it again. Here we go. You have a good ear. You followed. Very good. Okay, so now we're going to play with another exercise that probably feels a little bit silly, but we learned some good things from it. So I want you to try like a really big dog, like Beethoven in the dog movies. So you've been running, you're out of breath. Now we're going to try like you're a little bit of a smaller size than that. Maybe you're like a golden retriever. Now, a little bit smaller than that, maybe you're like a Samoyed. Now, a little bit smaller than that, maybe you're more like a, I don't know, like a toy poodle size, like a small dog. Right? Now, we're going to go even smaller than that. Maybe you're like a Maltese. You're like 6 pounds. Now, itty bitty, like you're a Yorkie or like a teacup Chihuahua. You could like sit in somebody's hand. And you can feel how it just stays open and that air just changes direction. Ideally, we keep the air flowing consistently the whole time we're singing. It's either flowing in, turning around, flowing back out, turning around, flowing in. It never stops moving. A lot of the time, people will like to sing, stop, breathe in, stop, sing, stop, breathe in. But we want it to be I sing, breathe, and then I sing, breathe, sing, breathe, sing. So we want to feel like that air can just change directions and keep flowing all the time. And the only difference is which direction it's moving. So my first voice teacher I ever had, she said it's like a water wheel. The river keeps flowing and that wheel just keeps spinning. And depending on how fast the river's flowing, that wheel's going to spin faster or slower, but it's never going to stop flowing. It's never going to stop spinning. All right, so we're going to think about that feeling of keeping a continuous flow of that breath energy. Let's try... Let's try on the lip bubbles or the tongue trills. So for me, think about a horse in the summertime and flies are buzzing around and they like shake their head and they're like, Can you try that? Like a horse in the summertime. He's like, oh, get the flies out of the way. Exactly, yeah. So now we're going to focus that energy a little more. Good. Focus on the center of that top lip and a narrow stream of air and vibrate those vocal folds.
That's what it falls
Yeah,
apart.
so usually if it stops, there's something getting in the way. This exercise is really great for checking multiple things. Is your posture in alignment where it needs to be? Is your breath flowing as it needs to be unhindered? Is there any tension creeping in that's stopping the airflow? Do we have the right things relaxed and the right things engaged? So it's a really good one when you're first getting started. So since right now you can get it started, but it's the sustaining long term that's the challenging part, we're just gonna get your body used to making that sound at different pitches. So we're gonna try on. So just like little bursts of it. And this is an arpeggio, so just skipping down each time. So we're going to do a All right, we're going to stop. Yeah, so this week, see how far you can go with that and see if you can kind of practice that even a couple minutes a day and just kind of exercising those muscles and getting them used to that. All right, so now let's try. I want to see what happens if we try to do the rolled R. So that.
I'm even worse at those.
Okay, well, just try. I just want to see what happens. Okay, so that actually is better than where I started because I could not do them at all when I first tried. Now, it's very normal for Americans to not be able to do those because it does not appear anywhere in our language. So the ideal, though, is that we as singers can separate. Americans don't like to do this. We like to kind of chew our words. We move our jaw and our tongue simultaneously. So all these movements, our body wants to connect them. But as singers, we want to be able to control that sound and that output. So being able to isolate movements is going to be really useful for us. So what you're going to work on this week then is those quick movements of the tongue while keeping that jaw relaxed. So I want you to try to just release that jaw, relax it down, and then try just a flick of the tongue, la, 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 la. And I can see your jaw wants to move, which is very normal. I have to fight my jaw because I get jaw tension. So I have to work on this all the time. So getting that jaw to relax, you can like wiggle it. You can massage the joint. I do grind my teeth in my sleep sometimes. I can't help it. I don't know I'm doing it. So I'll wake up and my jaw will be tight and I have to work on it. So keeping that released and then la, 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 la. Good. You can also try D's. Da, 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 da. And the tongue can move as much as it wants, but the jaw we want to keep still. So we're going to try singing on la, 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 la. And see if we can keep that jaw relaxed. Breathing in. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, La
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 la.
la la.
La la
La
la
la
la
la
la.
la la.
La la
La
la
la
la
la la
la.
la.
La la
La
la
la
la
la la la.
la. Good. Yeah. So be exercising that this week. I'm curious what happens if we try to do the like kids will go at each other.
Um,
Yeah, that's another good one to try. You can really release a lot of tension in the throat and in the back of that tongue when you stick out the tongue and do that. So try just sliding on that.
I yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have a little bit of like the coordination isn't quite there. There's like tension blocking because that movement, that jaw and the tongue, it's wanting to kind of like lock in together and
Yeah.
move together. So those are some things we'll keep working on. So just keep that in mind. We'll keep working on those and work on those during the week. I want to be sure too that you this week, every day, if you can, take time to just let your voice kind of slide like ooh, just some sirens sliding up and down, freeing up your voice, opening up the different spaces. Awesome. Another one you can do to try to release some of that jaw tension is to just wiggle your jaw while you're singing. So I want you to try. We're going to try going a little bit higher just for the heck of it. And we're going to try on. And you're just going to wiggle the whole time. If you feel it get stuck or like yank or like get sort of like sticky, that tells us that that note, that spot is a spot where your body wants to tighten up. And so it's like the muscles are trying to help, but we want to get it to where we trust the breath to carry the sound. Yeah. So we're going to try that on that ah, sliding through the octave, breathing in. Ah. Good. Ah. Good. Ah. Excellent. Good. We definitely went higher that time. That's awesome. I would say, I mean, we went like half an octave higher than we did the other time. So that's great. That's awesome. Okay. So good. So the wiggling you can feel, and I'm noticing it's usually like at the top that it'll kind of like get rigid, and then you can wiggle a little more on the way down. So keep that in mind that what's happening is those neck and throat muscles are kind of like tensing as you're going up higher. And so they're trying to like engage and help, but it's counterintuitive. When we do that, we actually end up constricting the airflow and narrowing it. So if you had like a really open airflow when you were lower, if they try to help, then we can really narrow that tube and it's harder for the air to get through. And what do we need when we go higher? Faster airflow. So we need that to stay really open. So if these outer neck muscles are tensing, that's going to actually hinder the airflow. So that's something to be working on this week too. Awesome. Good. All right. So this week you're going to be working on sliding. You're going to be working on some scales. You're going to be working on some skips, arpeggiated patterns. You're going to make sure that you go into the low part of your voice as well as the upper part of your voice. And I also want you to do some breathing exercises this week as well to see if we can strengthen the breath muscles a bit more. Do you happen to have a song that you could share a little bit with me, even if it's just like a verse chorus or just a chorus, just so I can hear a little bit of if you have a song that you just like to sing and you're working on it, what that might sound like? Do you have something that I could just hear a little bit of today?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of, and there's a day to day, there's three or four songs that I sing for the at church.
Yeah,
Trying to think of which, and some of them use different parts of my range.
sure, yeah.
So our church's kind of theme song, there's a icon and there's a song about it. Um, this one's a little bit higher up, or at least I don't sing it low because it sounds better higher up.
Sure.
Joy of all who sorrow, an intercessor of the offended, feeder of the hungry, consolation of travelers, harbor of the storm tossed, visitation of the sick, protection and intercessor of the infirm, staff of old age, mother of God on high, thou art the immaculate. Hasten, we pray, and save thy slaves.
All right, awesome. Yeah, you actually have a really nice tone on that. I'm loving it. So this has a little bit more of
I can
that kind
feel
of
the
traditional like chant kind of feel with it. And you've got a really nice rounded shape there, which is usually what we want. And also, so you have more of like, even though it's higher in pitch, you have a little bit of a warmth in the tone as well, which is really nice, and a minimal vibrato. It's not that the vibrato is non-existent, but like especially in those faster moving sections, you do a nice job of like keeping the clarity, keeping the warmth in the tone, the rounded quality. But then it's a little more straight tone through there. And then when you have a more long held note, you'll let it kind of blossom into a little more vibrato there, which sounds really lovely. You're doing really nice phrasing as well through there. Really nice. So you mentioned you have, so this is one that you guys do pretty much every week. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's
Sometimes
like
two or three
the,
times in a service,
mhm.
um, yeah, I usually sing it a little bit quieter because I'm a little bit more embarrassed in church because I'm still figuring a lot of things out.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll say this too, like the vibrato you heard, that normally doesn't come out. So that
Oh,
all the warm up that we just
okay.
did, like I think that
Hmm.
helped.
Yeah, I
Um,
really liked it. I thought it was really nice. It has um like a I mean it's nice that it just sort of like flows out of you at those points. And it's like a blossoming flower at the end of the phrase when you're holding out a note. It's really pretty. So I like it a lot. So I would love for you to be able to keep that. So it's nice to hear that, with the flexibility and stretching the voice muscles more and, warming up really thoroughly that you're like, oh, that normally doesn't come out. And my guess is that based on what I heard today and like some of the things that you've said, I would guess that you're really listening to yourself and trying to make your sound what you think that it should be. And so you've sort of created a little bit of a habit of holding and controlling your voice. And what I would really love to work on starting out is freeing your voice, releasing your voice a little bit more, and trusting that your voice kind of knows what to do. You have a really strong ear. Anything I played, like that time when I fumbled, you just followed it. And so your ear is really strong. But I'm going to challenge you to listen and judge your voice less this week and just sort of embrace singing for the joy of singing and make it more of like an exploration of getting to know your instrument. We can't really choose what instrument we have. It's kind of like if a voice comes in and they say, "Oh, I'm a flute, but I really want to be a trumpet." I can't change their voice from a flute to a trumpet. I can help them master their instrument and get some of those more like trumpet like qualities with their flute instrument, right? But I can't convert their instrument into an entirely different instrument, right? And so the first step is kind of seeing it as a relationship. We don't get to choose our instrument. Our body is our instrument, which is a pretty cool thing. So it's a lifelong relationship where every day you're waking up and going, "Hey voice, how you doing today? Where are you at today? What do you need today?" And you learn to work together towards a goal, right? So rather than working against your natural instrument that you have, getting to know it more and then learning to work with it as a partner. And that does take a little bit of kind of a reshaping of your perspective about how you're approaching your singing and the voice. But I really like your instrument. You have a beautiful, huge range, which doesn't make a singer good or bad. Frank Sinatra is one of the greats, right? And he only really sang in one octave ever, right? He just really got good at that octave. But having more of a range allows you more versatility, allows you to explore more different things. So it's just kind of fun. I really like, though, that you have been in the past, even if it hasn't been recent, exploring different parts of your range. Because obviously, since we can get you to those spaces, your body's like, "Oh, I can open up to that. Like I've done that before." So that's coming through. It's kind of like riding a bike. If you're like, "I haven't really sung in that range for a while," it's like it just kind of your body was figuring it out and was like, "Oh yeah, we know what to do here." So I'm gonna send you. Can I get your email? I'll make sure that I've got that right. Do you want to put it into the chat, or I can just type it out right now too?
Sure. I'll put it in the chat.
Sure, yeah, and then I'll know that I've got it right. Because I'm going to send you some like homework for the week. Again, it's going to be working on, I think I'm going to add in some like tension release as well, focusing on being sure that we don't have anything like tightening that's actually hindering, even though we like subconsciously think it'll help. And then I would love for you this week to maybe make a few recordings of some pieces that you sing for church so that I can just kind of hear what you're doing with them. And then I can send you some feedback on like those particular songs, what I am loving about what I'm hearing, and maybe a couple ideas of ways that you could tweak it or approach it a little bit differently or practice it differently. Thank you for the email. So I'm going to send you some homework for the week just based on some things I was hearing, and that'll help you to just have like a clear direction with your practice. When I first started teaching, I figured out pretty quickly that people don't always know how to practice. And so I like to be sure that you have a pretty clear vision of what you want to be working on. So I know that the first lesson, our first session meeting, is a little bit different. Moving forward, it's going to be more like we'll get together. If you've warmed up already, we'll probably talk a little bit about how your voice is feeling, do a few technique exercises, dive into more repertoire, specific songs that we're working through, and then we're going to work on techniques within those songs, and even all the way to expression and polish and performance practice. And in the first session, it's a little more of kind of like assessing where we're at, getting on the same page. So I would love to hear your thoughts as we were exploring today. What was maybe one moment that just was very satisfying, where it felt good? It was like, oh, I really liked that. Like maybe you felt like proud of what your voice was doing, or it was like a light bulb moment for you, a moment where you were like, that was satisfying.
I think two come to mind. One, when I was following you with the scales,
Yeah.
especially that I was able to like even follow when you flubbed a key or whatever.
Yeah.
That tells me something, because I also, we're a very small, it's just a pitch in choir, like whoever's there who can sing.
Yeah.
And so I'm always listening to three or four other voices around me and trying to follow,
Yeah,
harmonize, and like it's um sometimes I get misled, sometimes,
sure.
it happens, it's fine. We say like, yeah, we go flat together, like
Right.
but uh yeah, that makes me a little more one confident in my ear, but also aware that yeah, it can trip me up from time to time if I don't have enough confidence
Sure.
myself. And then
Okay.
realizing during the humming too, like I wasn't expecting I was going to get that low, especially not today.
Hmm.
Like my
Yeah.
voice wasn't feeling that good. I think probably the cold weather
Right.
coming
Our
into this.
voices do not like cold.
Yeah.
So that's pretty normal. Our bodies like to be warm when we're singing. And so I actually have one student who, on purpose, they go do a workout with their best friend and then they come to their lesson right after
Hmm.
because they're like, my body's all warm and like I've been stretching and exercising. And they're like, it just seems like a good time to like, my body is my instrument and like get it conditioned and get my voice going. So they actually do that on purpose. They like go exercise and they come straight to it because they're like, my body and my voice are ready to go. So yeah, the cold is less appealing for our voices. So whatever you can do to kind of be keeping it warm. That's why singers wear scarves a lot or like turtlenecks
Hmm.
or, you know, um, running heat will dry your air. So I would recommend in the winter also being mindful of that, like either running a humidifier or you can even get a bowl of water, just like put it on a shelf in the room and it'll just evaporate into the air. And that'll help put some moisture back into the air. Or
Okay.
like when you're showering, just don't run the fan and like leave the door open and let the steam go out into your house. That can be really helpful in the wintertime too, because the air gets drier and it's colder, and our voices just don't like that. So, hydrating, staying warm. Um, yeah, that's a good point you made about you want to have the confidence that you know exactly what you're doing and you don't get pulled away if you hear something contrasting. So working like on harmonies and things and having you be like, I know that I know my part and that you can't get pulled away. My student June was working on basically that yesterday. She was like, in my practice track, there's like dissonance in the chord. And she was like, I keep messing up in this one little spot because it's like the track doesn't sound like it goes with her part because there's a tension and release moment. And in that tension moment, she's like, I don't know my note. And she can do it a cappella, but then when she does it with the track, it'll pull her because she has that same thing where she has a really strong ear. So I think that's a great thing to be focusing and working on. So I made a note of that we'll keep working on that moving forward. Um, and I love that you mentioned like going that low. You were like surprising yourself and you were like, ooh, my voice opened up down there. And it was like really rich, like hot fudgy brownies fresh out of the oven, like really just like a rich kind of tone down there too, which was really beautiful. So I'm really excited to keep working. I've got a good idea of kind of where we're going, what we want to master. So things like working through the full range, getting you feeling really solid and comfortable with your full range, and also those kind of bridge connection moments, getting those really smooth and feeling confident with those. Getting clarity through them to where it doesn't feel like a clear like flip that's audible to your listeners. You mentioned tone. I thought you were getting some really beautiful tone colors today. We can definitely keep working on that. And since you're kind of pointing that out, that kind of tells me you're not totally secure in that. So even though you were making some beautiful sounds that I was loving, it feels to me like you're not totally sure of them. And maybe it's kind of like hit or miss too. Like maybe you have an idea of what you want to sound like, and sometimes you can get it, and sometimes it's not there. So you don't have
Yeah.
that confidence in your ability to get the tone that you want right now. So that's one thing that we're definitely going to work on as well. Um, and things like, a warmth or a brightness, more or less vibrato, those are a little more of like the nuanced qualities. So, what we mainly focused on today was just the pure creation of sound, the raw sound. But if I want to change more detailed sounds, I'm going to also use my articulators in the mouth, my tongue, my jaw opening and closing, that palate space, my lip shape, the interactions with the teeth. So I'm thinking about those kind of shapes as well as the resonant spaces, which I mentioned a couple times, which are kind of like open cavities we vibrate into in the body as kind of like a natural amplification. And that's going to help us also get different types of tone. Like, do I want to vibrate more in my sinus cavity? That's going to give me a more nasal quality. And if I was doing, a Loretta Lynn take of an old gospel hymn, in the sweet by and by, maybe I want that. I kind of exaggerate it, but I want more of that nasality there. It's going to work really well. But then if I'm doing more of like a classical piece, maybe like a Handel Gloria, I want more of that woo, woo, kind of heady feeling, kind of a feeling, right? If I am doing more of like a Gregorian chant, I'm going to minimize the vibrato, but still have that lift. Do, 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 do. I'm getting more of that kind of quality. For jazz, it's going to be lower pitches. I'm going to have kind of a free vibrato and like if I have it or not, but it's going to be lower, but it's going to have the warmth. So more of like a fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. That's still warm. If I have a brightness in the tone, maybe I'm like leading as the cantor, and so I want them to like hear me a little more clearly and be able to follow that more. I might purposefully add a little more brightness to the quality. Or depending on the style, like if I was doing a musical theater song or like a Disney song, I'd have a little more brightness in the quality. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing, and you're going to use those resonant spaces as well as these different shapes we create in our mouth to find that. So I'd love to play a little bit more with the vowels next time as well, because that can help us feel like different shapes in the mouth and gain more awareness of that. And then, hmm, yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking what we're going to focus on just right now. And then as you master those things, we'll add more. But that's kind of my vision for right now, what we're working on. So I'm going to be emailing you some homework. We're going to focus on breath. We're going to focus on singing through the full range. We're going to focus on playing with strengthening that chest voice, the head voice, and connecting through the mix. That's going to be our main focus for right now. And then moving forward, we're going to be layering more of those other things that we talked about into practice as well. And then don't forget this week, I want you to record a couple of the other songs that you do in church just so I can hear a little bit of them. It can just be like a voice memo on your phone. You like, do an app and just like sing into it and, send it to me just so I
Sure.
can hear a little bit of where it's at. And then I can have an idea as you're practicing what you're doing during the week, that kind of thing too. If you ever get stuck or have a question, feel free to ask me during the week. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. And you've got my number and you'll have my email then
Mm,
too. So yeah, so you
sure.
feel free to reach out. Um, are you thinking you want to do more like weekly sessions? Or are you wanting to do like every other week? Or are you thinking more like schedule as you go if you have a particular piece at church that you want to be focused on? What kind of works best for you and like your work schedule, that kind of thing?
Maybe every other week.
Sure.
Also, what is your hourly rate?
Yeah, great. So for different sites, sometimes they have different fees, but my rates are 35 for a half hour, 50 for 45, and 65 for the hour. So that just
Okay.
is adjusted sometimes on the platform if they have certain fees or things. But that's my general pay scale that I do. I do have some students who like are a single mom or like in college or whatnot. So we'll negotiate kind of based on income because I feel very strongly that all people deserve education and training if they want it. And people have been good to me too in the past. So like with scholarships and things. So that's something I really believe in. So if that is kind of a consideration for you, feel free to just kind of be open and honest with me and we can definitely discuss
I think
placement or whatnot.
65 for an hour sounds pretty reasonable.
Okay. All right.
Um,
So we'll plan to do about every other week. Do Mondays typically work well for you, or are there other days that work for you a little bit better?
Pretty much every day except Wednesday around
Okay.
this time, maybe a little
Sure.
bit later,
Yeah,
if that's okay. But
absolutely. Yeah.
4 or 5 is pretty
Um,
ideal.
sure, absolutely. So then looking ahead, and that's Eastern time, is that right? I just want to
Yeah.
be sure yeah, okay, great. Just
You're also you're in Carmel, right?
I am, yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm
Eastern
in
time.
yeah, I'm in Indianapolis, so
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I was looking
Great.
for somebody local just
Yeah.
in case, there was like
Right.
we need
You can
to get
like go
together
to
and work
a
on something.
recital, you can, yeah, like come in
Yeah.
person. Absolutely. Yeah. So looking ahead then, March 3rd would be exactly 2 weeks ahead. So if that day looks good, you said usually like 4 or 5 works well. I can do either of those times that day. So which one would you prefer?
Um, let's do 5.
All right. Sounds good.
That way I just don't have to I'm not rushing
Yeah.
to I get off of
Right.
work at
You've got a little more
3 and then
flexibility. Yeah. I like that too. I used to try to like cram everything in, and I figured out I was like, I'm just putting too much pressure on myself, like having no wiggle room. So now I try to give myself like a little buffer between lessons and whatnot too. So
okay.
it's not like feeling stressed all the time, jumping from one thing to the next. So I've got your email. You're going to be getting an email from me about some ideas of how to be practicing this week. Again, feel free to reach out, send me those recordings, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Okay.
Okay, great.
Nice work
Thank you.
today, John.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you soon.